Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming to the RA, HM, and CA info session. My name is Cesar Cruz Benitez. My English pronouns are he, him, his, and I'm the area coordinator for Foss Hill. And I'm joined by some current staff members of Res Life.
Hi everyone, my name is Selena Delgado. I am a junior at West. I use she, her pronouns, and I am an RA in West Code 3.
Hello, my name is Simi. I am a junior and I'm one of the RAs in BUTS B. And I use she, her pronouns.
Hello, everyone. My name is Olivia. I use she, her, hers pronouns. I am a sophomore and I am an RA in NIC 7.
Hi everyone, I'm Julia. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a junior and I'm the HM of Asian American House, also known as AAA.
So the agenda that we have laid out, we've already done introductions. I will go into the reason why we have this session, an overview of the Office of Residential Life. We'll discuss the roles and responsibilities that RAs, HMs, and CAs have, some essential skills for the position, what it looks like to hold these positions and what commitments it is you're signing up for, especially as very busy people who are probably involved in a lot of things. Then an overview of the process and the timeline for applications, and typically a Q&A portion, but this is recorded. So if you have any questions, you can email the emails that are at the end there. So why do we hold this session? So why we do this is so you can get to know more about the Office of Residential Life, learn about our positions, the resident advisor position, the house manager position, and the community advisor position, expectations, what it looks like from day to day. Provide the overview of the application process and answer questions if you have any. Once again, you can just email us for those since this is a recorded session. But this came about through a collaboration with the WSA leadership because they wanted to ensure that people who were applying to work for Res Life really understood what it is they were applying to when signing up for and accepting these positions. So that way, everyone, there's no like gotcha moment when you're in the job and you're like, this isn't what I signed up for. So a little bit more about our department. We have a mission statement that is rooted in promoting responsible, inclusive learning communities, and you can feel free to pause this right now so you can read the entirety of our mission statement. We also have a celebration statement that is rooted in that aspect of creating inclusive communities and making sure that every member of the Wesleyan community that lives on feels like they truly belong, regardless of any social identities that they may or may not carry. And then overall, Wesleyan University has 4 overarching learning goals that every department on campus strives to implement in their curriculum, and Res Life is no different. And so for those 4 learning goals are mapping, navigating complex environments, expressing, writing, and communication, mining, empirical analysis and interpretation, and engaging, negotiating cultural context. You can read more about what these mean on the Res Life website.
Okay, so I guess I'll take over staffing. The residences at Wesleyan are divided into different areas, 5 different areas, each supervised by a different area coordinator. So for RAs, we kind of tackle 3 of the 5 areas, and resident staff advisors staff the residence halls across campus. So the Butterfields are managed by the AC Emily. You'll hopefully get to know her soon. 200 Church, Writer's Block, Clark and Bennett are managed by the AC Bobby, and Westco and Nix are Foss Hills staff, and that's managed by Cesar.
And HMs are, of course, responsible for overseeing all of our program houses. So there are 30 program houses, and feel free to pause and read the whole list. Shout out to my house, AAA, which you can see in the bottom left corner. It's a beautiful house, and I love them so much. So make sure you read the mission statement for any of the houses that you're interested in staffing for. And on the next slide, I think there are more houses. So again, feel free to pause.
Then there's the community advisors, and the community advisors are found across all our different housing types except for program houses. So you have Hewitt, which has that like traditional res hall feel. And then you have the high-low apartments that are just like also like Fauver apartment style. And then the houses, wood frames that you all are also eager to live in when you become a senior.
So there are some similarities between residential advisors, house managers, community advisors. So first and foremost, the one biggest similarity is that we're all Res Life staff members. This means that we're a part of a larger staff that will both challenge and supports each other. This is accomplished through regularly scheduled staff meetings, trainings, and staff activities, as well as constant and constructive communities with other staff members. RAs, HMs, and CAs are also educators. We are expected to follow the residential curriculum that supports our learning outcomes and goals via lesson plans. And there's usually a few lesson plans a month that need to be completed and shared amongst your residents. And we're also administrators. Our student staff, we assist in major administrative tasks such as check-ins at the beginning of the year and the checkout process at the end of the year.
So to add on to that, the RAs, CAs, and HMs are policy enforcers. Trust me, it's one of the least desirable aspects of this job, but it is critical that HMs and RAs and CAs enforce these values in our community to ensure that it's safe and inclusive, and that all residents are learning to be responsible and accountable citizens of the community. And another responsibility is to be a resource and a referral agent. All CAs, HMs, and RAs have to be available to their resident and help them access different offices and resources on campus that would help them grow and succeed as students and resident. One of the important roles is to be a role model. As a staff member of Res Life, you are expected, we're being held at a high standard than other members of the community. So you have to be at your best behavior. You don't have the leniency that other community members do have. So do put that into account when you're, as you consider the roles of either a HM or RA or CA.
Yeah, and jumping off of Simi, one of the kind of key points that's really prevalent in this job is being a mediator. And this will come up pretty often as being an RA. So oftentimes RAs, HMs, and CAs are called upon to mediate conflicts in their community, whether it's between roommates, hallmates, apartment, or housemates, and even neighbors. So with this, you will have situations where you'll have noise complaints, or it'll be a party night and you kind of have to mediate certain situations. And even like roommate conflicts, you'll find that happens really often. And that's just something that you're required to handle. And the goal in this is to find a solution so that each member of our community can thrive. And on top of that, as a counselor, RAs, HMs, and CAs are trained to utilize effective listening and helping skills so that they can correct residents to on-campus resources. And lastly, they are also trained to respond to crises in our communities. This can include issues such as medical emergency or a major facilities problem. RAs, HMs, and CAs know the protocol and who to connect for assistance.
And as student leaders, we as staff are also expected to advocate for our residents. So making sure you use your voice to raise any concerns in your community and keep the professional staff well informed of those issues or problems so that we can better serve our students. And finally, just keep in mind that all of these roles and responsibilities we talked about add up to being the best community builder that you can be.
So there are also some differences between the 3 different positions, namely duty, the residential curriculum, and staffing in those 3 different positions. So starting with duty, RAs are on duty typically not typically, they are on duty every night, or an RA is on duty every night rather. And so an RA may be on duty 1 to 2 times a week, depending on how you schedule it. Whereas house managers, while they don't do duty, they are expected to be available to their residents. And then community advisors in Hewitt and in High-Low are on duty on Friday and Saturday nights only. And then community advisors in the wood frames don't perform traditional duty in the way that the High-Low, Hewitt, or resident advisors do, but they do an on-call type of system where they check in with residents, especially pre-pandemic, when houses would have parties, and kind of go through like a checklist with them to make sure they knew everything they had to put on that party. Then in terms of the residential curriculum, just like with anything in the curricular world, it changes based on the population that you're working with. So even though the residential curriculum might be working towards the same thing, or the lesson plan may be written for each of these different positions, there's going to be slight tweaks in how they look for the different areas. So a lesson plan for a first year student, it's going to look different for a senior who has been here on campus longer and is ready to move on to things beyond Wesleyan, or the ways in which things are set up. So, as a community advisor, compared to an RA, the staff member to resident ratio is different. So the ways in which the staff member may go about implementing lesson plans may be a lot more different, especially the wood frame CAs, when you have people across all different houses that you don't necessarily live amongst, whereas RAs have all their residents on their house, or house managers, they're all concentrated in that one building. And this then similarly goes into staffing. So RAs are a part of a larger staff team that all live within the same building. For example, there are 7 RAs for Westco, 6 in Nicholson, and then HMs, they're the only staff member in their house. So while they're part of a larger staff team and they can connect with one another at staff meetings and about issues they're having in relation to just their positions, there's that somewhat of a disconnect of being the only house manager in the building in most cases. There are some houses where there is one other house manager for our combo houses like Eclectic and Movement that are in the same building. And then community advisors kind of have that mix of the high-low CAs are close in geography to one another. The Hewitt CAs all live within Hewitt, but then the wood frame CAs are all spread across the different streets in Middletown where all the wood frames are.
So there are some essential skills that are needed for all 3 positions. So One of them is you need to have a desire to help your peers. A lot of times people will come to you seeking help, advice, or looking for information regarding anything. So you have to be patient and willing to help them. Um, Another thing is you should be a problem solver. A lot of what we do is to help others work through their issues. Again, Selena mentioned roommate disagreements, right? We have to mediate, so you have to be able to problem solve in the heat of the moment. Another thing is organization and good time management. That is key to being successful, because you never know when you have to drop what you're doing to respond to an issue. And another thing is you'll be a part of a team and need to collaborate with others, but you'll also have a lot of tasks that you're expected to complete independently. So some of the lesson plans, some of them are basically hall meetings. That's something that you can do on your own. And then other times you can connect with your peers to throw a event for the entire building. So being able to work as a team and working independently are key.
Yeah, and I agree with what Olivia said. A lot of being able to work with a team kind of ties in with strong interpersonal skills, which are necessary to effectively support your residents. You're oftentimes going to be kind of communicating with your residents or communicating with your staff and communicating with your ACs, and kind of having that balance is important. The ability to persevere will come in handy during crisis situations. So just maintaining calmness whenever you're dealing with a situation will definitely help you think clearly and go about the situation as necessary. Also, as a role model, you're entrusted with enforcing the code of conduct, and it's critical that you are ethical and fair in your treatment of others. And being an RA, you kind of have to know that in a way, people are looking up to you. So you have to kind of lead by example. And lastly, just because you'll need to connect with a wide array of both students and staff, being an effective communicator, both orally and in writing, are important in these roles.
So let's talk about time commitment. RAs, CAs, and HMs, we do not have a life. We commit our lives to rest life. Just kidding. But seriously, yeah, time commitment. One of the things you will come to realize is that this job is time consuming, and you have to be a good time manager. And with experience, you sort of like navigate those spaces and how to go about it. But let's just talk about some of the things that is required, just so you have an idea of what our day-to-day life looks like. And one of the thing is that we do have trainings in the fall, and typically staff members do come back a week and a half early in August, but for training before classes starts. And there's always a weekly staff meeting that happens on Wednesday night with your team members and other the RAs, the HM, and other people in your team or in your area. And you also would have to have a one-on-one meeting with head resident and your area coordinator at least once a month. So you just kind of have that into perspective. Those are just chunks of time that you have to plan appropriately, or that's been mandated that you commit. In the winter, that is the spring break, you're also expected to come back at least 2 days prior to for training. So just kind of have that again into perspective. So in addition to this weekly meetings and training, you also have to have time to create and implement your residential curriculum that is some of the staff member here mentioned, like lesson plan. So you have to have those. You have a series of it in a semester, and you have to create time to think about it, plan appropriately, and still implement it. And on top of that, RAs do have duties either once or twice a week. CS typically have it once, that is in the weekends, like one weekend more or so. And HMs don't have duties, if I'm correct. They don't. And another thing is that on top of all of this, you have to understand that you have to be present to your resident just so you can know them on a personal note. So you have to be present all the time. You're not being present in your room, but you have to be available when someone needs your attention or a resident is in a crisis. We mentioned crisis management, noise complaint, and all of those things. So if you're not there, you can manage those situations. So you have to think about that and know that it's a commitment as well that is expected of you.
Okay, so now let's just get into the logistics of the application process. So just for an overview of the timeline, make sure you're paying attention to the important deadlines, which are posted online. Applicants have to start their application via Handshake and then fill out the Google form, and that's due by February 19th. And my advice for that application is just to make sure you're thorough and thoughtful in your responses, and be yourself, of course. And for that application, you also need 2 references. And when you're thinking about who would make a good reference, just ask yourself, who knows me well, who can best speak to my skills and abilities to be a leader. So you can think about asking a current or former RA or someone who's worked for Res Life or a supervisor from another job. You can also think about volunteer coordinators, a faculty member, a coach, all those figures that know you well. For my letters personally, I asked a professor that knows me really closely, and then my former house manager. So also keep in mind, please don't ask a family member, even though they might know you well, they are definitely biased. So don't do that. And in terms of eligibility, so all applicants must have sophomore class standing by the start of the next academic year. And you also have to be in good academic standing. So because our jobs can be very time consuming, we want to make sure that your academic work is not being compromised just because you're working for Res Life. And another requirement is that you can't have more than 1 judicial point at the time of your application. If you do get a judicial point after submitting an app and going through that process, you will no longer be eligible to work for us next semester. And then, of course, there's the interview too. And then finally, the decisions will be made in March as per the timeline. And make sure to check your email because notifications will be made electronically.
And then there's the interview, which we kind of talked about a little bit, but this is usually something we get a lot of questions about, of like, what's the interview like? What do I need to prepare? And honestly, we really want you to be yourself, because we want to see the person who's going to actually be doing the job and not the person you think you need to show us that can get the job done. Be on time. We are all interviewing several candidates, and on top of doing all our other duties within our roles as area coordinators, and also your peers are sitting in on these interviews, and you all are busy, so being prompt is important. Being alert, especially since it's happening over Zoom this year, it's going to be imperative that we know that you have our attention and we have yours. reading and understanding the job description. I know we've mentioned this several times now, but we really want you all to have a really good idea of what it is that you are signing up for, and what the job is like. That's why we have this information session. That's why we ask you all to interview a current staff member, and now asking you to read and understand the job description. Um, and then as for dress, it's really just a matter of being presentable. The other thing that should be added here is, since it will be happening over Zoom, as much as you can control it, try not to have a distracting background, or background noises, that, might just throw things off for the people who are interviewing you, or make it difficult to hear you, and things like that, because we do want to hear you and pay attention to you, and respect your time as much as you're trying to respect our time. So words of wisdom, at least for me, speaking from an area coordinator perspective, I cannot emphasize how much we want you to be yourself, especially as we are considering people that we're going to be supervising.
Yeah. For me, from my word of wisdom, is in regards to the interview process. I know it can be really nerve-wracking. It was really nerve-wracking for me, but just always remember, take a deep breath, and you've prepared for it. So if you've made it that far in getting yourself to be prepared, think of it as a conversation rather than an interview. You're going in, you know, what you've prepared for, and just shoot your shot.
Yeah, I think after hearing all of this, you might still have some questions. I think if we've said anything that is not clear, or you're concerned about something that was mentioned or that wasn't mentioned in this presentation, I would highly suggest you talk to someone like an RA, HM, or a CA. You know, prepare yourself, really prepare yourself. You cannot just overemphasize how much it is that you know what you're getting yourself into. It's not a scary job, to be honest. Like, this is one of the best experience for me, being a Rest Life staff member. So some of this work job duties can be daunting, but I assure you that, if you have some lingering question, just ask around, for clarification, so that you sort of have an idea of what you're getting yourself into. Yeah, but good luck.
So my words of wisdom is in regard to the interview process. I would encourage you all to think about your various experiences that you've had prior to this moment, and see how the things that you've done or experienced fit in with the essential skills that are listed in the PowerPoint. Because I remember in my interview, they asked questions like, when is the time you had to problem solve? When did you have to persevere? And I mean, I was able to think of things on the fly, but there's some things that you wouldn't necessarily put with problem solving or perseverance, that you've experienced and you've gone through in your life. So I would really sit down and think about it, so you have some concrete examples going in to your interview that kind of fit into those skills.
Yes, definitely want to echo what everyone has been saying about the interview. Yeah, I would say just make sure you really reflect on why you want to work for Rest Life, because obviously, as we've gone over, it's a big commitment to do this job, and you do actually have to really love it and be passionate about your communities. So just think about that, and yeah, I'm sure it will show through and you'll do great.
All right. So thank you all for listening in. If you have any questions, whether that's in relation to the application process, or you're having any difficulties with anything, feel free to reach out to Maureen Islub at mislub@wesleyan.edu, or myself, Cesar Cruz Benitez, at ccruzbenitez@wesleyan.edu. And don't forget, follow us on Facebook and our Res Life plug. We did do a sick Bernie meme and hopped on that trend. I thought it was funny. If you think it's
Yeah.
funny, like, come join the awesome staff that is Rock Life.